question.
Yeah.
If you did a polygon or a line, you'd have a lot more coordinates, right? You've got all these vertices.
Yep.
And it's storing those in the...
It's still stored in a single field in this WKT, it's well-known text format.
Just a huge list of...
Yeah. Yeah, just a long string. So to get onto the view stuff, because this is where it starts to get quite powerful, it does the data handling of lat and long in this. And I guess that's the other thing with OpenLayers. You don't have to use this WKT format. You can actually just have one field that's a latitude and one field that's a longitude if you're getting your data in a different way. And you don't want to use this widget. So it's a useful point. So let's just jump straight into some examples. So here is a view. Sorry, not doing. So we've got one that's our points of interest, and we're filtering by node type point of interest and published. We're pulling in 3 fields: the node title, the node teaser, and we're pulling in this WKT value. And just make sure you've got it set to WKT value and you're not trying to display a map on a map, because I don't know if it defaults to that, I can't remember. Oh, and the crucial thing, we've got our style is a data style. And our type is OpenLayers. Yeah, our type here, what do you see type in here? Data overlay. I don't even know where you find that. Anyway, it's an OpenLayers data type. It's not a node type or whatever. And then in the settings here, you say the data source is our OpenLayers WKT field, which you have to add here first. So it's this one here. And it says the title field is title, and the description field is our teaser. And this is used for the pop-ups, if you have them. So when you click on a point on a map, it needs to know what field is going to be the title and what's going to be the description. And then we have an attributes and styling section, which, to be honest, I've never really used too much. But this is where you'd go to start figuring out how to theme that pop-up. It's not something I've done. I can't really say too much about it. But
you want to add a thumbnail or something of it, like put a bunch of nodes on a map. Thumbnails. That's you'd have to add extra fields there.
Yeah.
That's what it says.
Actually, this is just the description on the tooltip as I look closer at what it says it does. Yeah, not something I've actually played with too much. So that's your data layer. So this is where you say, I want to display on my map all the points of interest that are published, and these are the fields that I need to load to get some location information and title and teaser. And I guess one other useful thing to show you is, if you're not using WKT, you'd say my data source is a lat long, and it's coming from this one field that contains the latitude and this other field that contains the longitude. Does that make sense? So
the documentation for this module?
There is, yep, on on Drupal.org in the handbook, they did a bunch of documentation. So these steps are all in there.
And, sorry, you said there was a geolocation that would give you the lat and long based on the city and the...
Yep, that's the... OpenLayers geocode module, so it looks something like this. So you just type in an address. It's actually pretty good at like doing kind of look ahead. It's the best thing I've seen off of Google Maps itself that for doing searching for places. So this is going back to our preset. We go to our layers and styles, and so down here we see all of the data layers that we've created through views or whatever. And we're enabling those 2 layers that we just built in views, choosing our style, our Drupal default style and our airport style. And here's how our map looks. So we've got our points of interest, that we introduced through Drupal, and we've got our airport. And potentially we could add in that the XML feed as well on top of this, if we wanted to. And if we click, you see a rather basic pop-up. And then you can click through into Christian Haven and see.
And that pop-up that's just OpenLayers, that's just all what you just did?
That pop-up is one of the default behaviors that comes with the Drupal implementation. And that's, it's one of the default behaviors that's in the OpenLayers JavaScript library. But you can look at that code, you can just copy that exact behavior in the Drupal module into your own custom module and say, actually my pop-up needs to, load in a thumbnail and have some Ajax behavior that does blah, 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 whatever. It's like I worked with the Google Maps API version 2, the Gmap module, and like it's so painful to extend that, so painful to customize. And I managed to build a pretty cool site with some help of people that were much better at JavaScript than I was at the time. But it wasn't an easy process, whereas this is just, this is really pretty good example of Drupal behaviors and JavaScript behaviors, and it all plays pretty nicely together.
Plus, like the load time has got to be fantastic when you're just pulling XML instead of hitting all these nodes.
And that's that's a good. Views does some pretty good caching as well. But if you wanted to, you could just build a view that outputs an XML file and load from that. And just to show that these are separate layers, you can just toggle different layers on and off.
Is there a good satellite view other than Google?
I don't know. It's such a personal thing, but Yahoo and Bing, I think, both have satellite views. I don't know.
But OpenStreetMap doesn't.
OpenStreetMap doesn't. People are actually working on it. There's people who've got kites that are flying around, getting into trouble when they go over air bases. And so it's coming. I think there's probably a website for it. There's probably. I don't keep up with absolutely.
I think NASA's got a map.
NASA too, yeah.
Can I ask you a question about the second point there, the filtering?
Yep.
Can you do, because you see, I know you can do exposed filters.
Yep.
Is there a way to do that sort of thing that just that filters the map without reloading the page? Like you can turn on and off layers that you can sort of.
Yep. Just what I was showing there in that demo, you can turn on and off layers. Beyond that, I don't know of any way to do it. But if you're good enough at JavaScript and you can write your own behavior for OpenLayers, you probably could figure out a way to do it. Because when you load these points onto the map, they all have some basic attributes associated with them, which are all in the DOM. So you could potentially figure out a way to add extra bits of information from the Drupal view. Like you could add the taxonomy into that point on the map and build your own kind of interesting custom toggle script. I don't think I could do that, or I could if I hacked away long enough, but it's certainly not something that's out there yet.
I don't want to take us too far off, but you were saying before about people creating other layers that weren't maps and creating visualizations or whatever for that.
Yeah.
Is there something that stands out for you that, have you got a recommendation to have a look at something?
I think this is a great way to do it. I can't remember any of the examples, but someone has done a pirate map. They've scanned in all the pirate maps, whatever, and you can just use OpenLayers as a way of navigating around those as if it was a Google map. Obviously, it's got a much narrower extent.
And what was the Raphael library?
Raphael JavaScript library.
Right.
I don't know how successfully it works. Like an experimental thing.
Okay.
People have been integrating that.
Or you could use it as a high-resolution image browser, right, with tilings.
Yeah, someone here was asking me the other day about it.
I was talking to you about that.
Yeah. So you could get very high resolution images and navigate and zoom using this as an interface. I don't know if that's good or bad or whatever, but it's certainly.
I think O'Reilly, working with someone, I can't remember who they worked with, they actually created a map of the future of the internet, or the internet states, that actually took all the different components, all the different players within the internet arena, and mapped them out and created a map very similar to a Risk map. If you're familiar with the board game Risk, they did a similar map like that. I think if you go to the O'Reilly website, you could probably find it there. It was really interesting. I don't know if they used OpenLayers, but it was pretty cool usage of a kind of their own customized map.
I'll move on just because I'm in the middle of a kind of crucial part, and I don't want you to get to forget the first part of what I just showed you, because otherwise it'll be useless without the second part. So that we were just talking about the data layer, building the data layer in views. Now this is the bit that tripped me up at the beginning, is you've got to do another part of that to actually have a map you can look at. So we've got a data layer that says, pull in all of our points of interest and pull in our airports and have them as layers. We also need to have some way of displaying that. So let's take a look at that. So here's our view. This is a second view for the display site. And we have page layers. For example, page as map/basic. And the style is an OpenLayers map. So before we had a display type of OpenLayers data, whereas now we have a page with the style OpenLayers map. And so if we look at the settings for that style, here's where we choose that preset that we just set up in the previous step with its data layer, its styles, its behaviors. So this is where you tie together your data and your presets and give it a page, a URL where you can actually see the map. So this doesn't have any fields, doesn't have any filters, it has nothing. It's just a way of displaying that information. So just to see that, that's exactly what we were just looking at before. So is that clear, or are people going to?
So without that, you can't do any of the others. The reason you were able to look at it before is because you've already set that up.
Yes. So.
Do you have any idea why they set it up that way? Because at least when you do GMap, you just make one thing and
yep.
it's easy, and you don't have to think about two separate views.
It's going back to that thing of trying to separate the data and the display. And it just happens to be that views is the way that they pull that together. You don't need to use views to display it. There's theme functions you could use to display it as well. You could just call a theme function that would call that preset. But I don't know exactly what the logic was of using views to do the display, but it was there.
I guess you could leverage other platforms, use Drupal as a database, and then have another presentation layer on mobile or something.
Yeah. I guess, it means you can very quickly put your map into a block if you use blocks for display, and you can have it show up in panels and stuff like that. So here we've just got a whole bunch of different displays at different URLs that are using different base maps. Don't think there was any other differences.